The first crack of thunder split the valley wide open, rolling across the plains like a cannon blast. Eleanor didn't flinch. She tilted her head back and let the rain pour over her, cool and wild against her skin. For the first time in weeks, the suffocating heat had broken, and she wanted to feel it, the storm, the freedom, the sky washing her clean. The water fell hard, plastering her long golden hair to her back as she stood knee-deep in the tall grass behind the old watermill, the place she once called home. Lightning flashed, and for an instant, the world around her glowed silver, the broken fences, the crooked sign that still read Gray Mill, the ghost of her husband's legacy. Thomas had been gone 2 years now, taken by fever, leaving her with debts, land disputes, and whispers from townsfolk who said a woman shouldn't be alone this far from the main road. But Eleanor had always been stubborn. Then came the sound that shattered her peace, the thundering of hooves. 2 riders cut through the downpour, dark coats clinging to their shoulders, their horses foaming from the climb. The first, a wiry man with a scar down his cheek, gave a crooked grin. The other, taller and broad, pushed back his hat, his gaze lingering where it shouldn't. "Well, look what the rain done brought us," the tall one drawled. A little angel bathing in the storm. Eleanor froze, clutching her shawl. "You've no business here," she said firmly. The scarred man laughed, sliding off his horse and landing in the mud with a splatter. "Lady, we got business everywhere the law don't ride. Ain't that right, Jed?" "Right as rain," the taller one sneered, looping a rope from his saddle. "Now, don't fuss. We'll keep you company till this storm passes." Eleanor stepped back, heart pounding. She'd been alone too long, too used to silence, too far from help. "I'll scream," she warned, Yet's grin widened. "No one'll hear you, sweetheart." "Not in this weather?" She screamed anyway, a sound that ripped through the rain and tore at the night. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Just the storm. Just her fear. Then, from the edge of the woods, something moved. The men turned, rifles halfway drawn. The figure that stepped out of the shadows was unlike anything Eleanor had ever seen. He was shirtless, his skin darkened by the rain and the sun, his body marked with streaks of red and white paint that ran like war symbols down his chest. Long black hair clung to his shoulders, and at his neck hung a pendant of carved bone and turquoise that caught every flash of lightning. Apache warrior stood still, eyes fixed on the 2 men. "Hell," the scarred man hissed, fumbling for his pistol. "He's one of them." But before he could fire, the warrior moved fast as lightning itself. The gun was struck from his hand by a thrown tomahawk that buried itself into the mud beside him. He staggered back, shouting. Jed pulled his revolver, but the Apache was already upon him. A blur of motion, a crash of bodies, a grunt, and the sound of metal hitting the ground. Jed fell face first into the mud, the warrior's hand gripping his collar. "Leave," the warrior said, his voice low and cold as stone. The scarred man didn't wait. He ran for his horse, kicked hard, and vanished into the downpour. Jed scrambled up after him, cursing, stumbling into the saddle before disappearing into the storm. And just like that, silence again. The warrior turned to Eleanor. His breathing was steady, his expression unreadable. Water dripped from his hair onto the ground. She clutched her shawl tighter, trembling. "Who are you?" "You should not be alone here," he said. His English was rough but clear. "It's my land," she managed. "At least." It was. His gaze drifted past her, to the old mill standing like a ghost behind her. "Not anymore," he murmured. "What do you mean?" She asked, stepping forward, but he was already moving, back into the rain, into the trees that swallowed him whole. Eleanor stood there for a long time, shivering. She didn't know if she should thank him or fear him. All she knew was that something had changed the moment he appeared. By morning, She would find strange footprints around the mill, and word would spread that an Apache warrior had been seen near town, but no one would believe that he had saved her life, and the next day, the entire Apache tribe would ride into town. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the land drenched in silver light. Mist rose from the grass, curling like ghosts between the fence posts. Eleanor stood on her porch, wrapped in her shawl, staring toward the trees where the Apache had vanished the night before. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, the rain streaming down his chest, the calm, unflinching gaze that had cut through the chaos like fire through fog. She didn't even know his name, only the echo of his words. Not anymore. What did he mean? That the land was no longer hers? Or that something darker was coming? She didn't have to wonder long. By noon, the first horse appeared on the horizon. Then another. Then a dozen more. Eleanor's heart froze. They came from the east, riding in silence, a long column of men and women on painted horses, their braids shining in the sun, their faces solemn and proud. The Apache. The town bell rang from miles away, a warning. Children were pulled from the streets, shop doors slammed, shutters locked. Even from her porch, Eleanor could hear the faint shouts. Apaches! They're coming down the valley! She stepped off her porch, her boots sinking into the wet soil. They were heading toward town, toward her land. By the time she reached Main Street, the air was thick with fear. The sheriff's men were arming themselves outside the saloon, rifles glinting in the light. Sheriff Holden, a man built from whiskey and suspicion, barked orders from his horse. Get the women inside. No one fires unless I say. Eleanor pushed through the gathered townsfolk. Sheriff, don't do this. They're not attacking. Holden turned, jaw tightening. You saw what happened near your mill, didn't you? Word's out, one of them was seen there. He saved me, she said firmly. Those men, they tried to take me. He stopped them. The sheriff stared at her for a long moment, then leaned close, lowering his voice. You best not go around saying things like that, Mrs. Gray. Folks here don't take kindly to Apache heroes. They'll listen if they hear the truth. Holden gave a dark chuckle. Truth don't matter much when fear's this thick. He rode off, leaving Eleanor standing in the mud as the riders approached. The Apache tribe stopped just beyond the edge of town, a wall of silent, proud figures. At their front was a man on a black horse, his face stern and weathered, an elder wearing a necklace of eagle feathers. Beside him rode the warrior from the storm. Eleanor's breath caught. He looked different in daylight, no longer a phantom of rain, but a man carved from earth and sun. His hair hung loose, his bare chest marked by faint scars. The turquoise pendant still rested against his skin. His eyes found hers instantly. No words, just that same unspoken recognition. The elder spoke first, his voice deep and calm. We come not for war, he said, his English careful, deliberate. We come for land. Land that was once ours. The land of the gray mill. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Holden stepped forward, spitting into the dirt. That land's under town claim now. Was sold fair and legal. Not fair, the elder replied. Not legal. Your men tricked our people. Signed what they could not read. He pointed toward Eleanor. She knows. Every eye turned to her. Eleanor's stomach tightened. I don't understand. The warrior beside the elder finally spoke. Your husband made deal with railroad. Promised land that was not his to sell. Eleanor felt her world tilt. That's not true. The warrior's gaze softened. You know the truth. In your heart, you know. Before she could speak, the sheriff raised his rifle. That's enough talk. You've had your say. Now turn back before we bury you here. The Apache elder didn't move. Neither did the warrior. The tension crackled like the storm before lightning. Then the elder lifted his hand. "We will return when the sun falls again. You will decide by then what is just." He turned his horse, and one by one, the riders followed, the thunder of hooves fading into the hills. The townsfolk broke into fearful chatter. Holden spat in the mud again. "They'll be back, and next time it won't be for talk. You best leave that mill behind, Mrs. Gray. It's cursed now." But Eleanor stood still, eyes fixed on the horizon where the Apache had disappeared. Cursed or not, she wasn't leaving, not until she found the truth about her husband, not until she knew why the warrior had said, "Not anymore." By nightfall, the town was on edge. Lamps flickered behind shuttered windows, and the streets lay empty except for the echo of boots and whispers that slithered through the dark. People spoke of war, of blood, of the Apache tribe returning at dawn to claim what they said was theirs. Eleanor sat alone by the fire in her cabin, beside the old watermill, the same one Thomas had built before the railroad came through. The air smelled of wet timber and smoke. Her shawl clung to her shoulders, but no warmth reached her bones. She couldn't stop thinking about the warrior, the way he'd looked at her, not as a victim, not as a stranger, but as someone tangled in a truth she hadn't yet faced. A sharp knock broke her thoughts. When she opened the door, Sheriff Holden stood there, hat dripping, hand resting on the butt of his revolver. His eyes were hard, his jaw set tight. "Evening, Mrs. Gray," he said. "Mind if I come in?" Eleanor hesitated, then stepped aside. "You've already made up your mind about them, haven't you?" Holden gave a low chuckle. "Lady, I don't need to make up my mind. I've seen what their kind do." "You think they rode into town today for tea and conversation?" "They didn't attack anyone," she said firmly. "They could have, but they didn't." He leaned against the wall, tipping his hat back. "That's what makes it worse. They're waiting. They're testing how soft we've gotten." Eleanor crossed her arms. "He saved me, Holden. That warrior could have left me to die, but he didn't." Holden's face darkened. "You telling me you're defending him now? Defending the same folks that burned half this valley 10 years ago?" "Maybe they had a reason," she shot back. The sheriff's gaze sharpened. "You listen to me, Eleanor. That land out there ain't yours anymore. It belongs to the railroad now. The deal was signed, and it's done. If those Apache come back tomorrow and find you still here, they won't see a widow. They'll see a trespasser." Her stomach twisted. Thomas would never have sold them stolen land. Holden smiled thinly. "You think you knew your husband? He was up to his neck in debt, and that mill was sinking fast. He took what he could get. That's the truth, whether you like it or not." Eleanor felt the floor tilt beneath her. "You're lying." He shrugged, pulling a folded piece of paper from his coat and tossing it on the table. "That's the railroad's claim. Signed by Thomas Gray himself. Now, I don't care what happens to this place, but I'll be damned if I let an Apache war start over it. You're leaving tomorrow morning." "I'm not going anywhere," she said quietly. Holden stepped closer, his voice lowering. "You think they'll spare you? You think that warrior gives a damn about some widow who bathes in the rain? You're a story to him. A reason to fight." Her chin lifted. "You're wrong. I saw his eyes. He wasn't like you think." For a moment, the sheriff studied her, then sighed and walked toward the door. "Suit yourself. But when the sun rises and they ride back, don't say I didn't warn you." He left her standing in silence, the paper on the table trembling from the wind through the open door. She picked it up. The signature was Thomas's, the familiar loops and marks she'd seen on every letter he'd ever written. But beneath it was a second name, one she didn't recognize. Holden. Her heart clenched. She took a candle, moving to the trunk by the hearth. Inside were her husband's old journals, tied with leather string. She opened one and scanned through the pages, notes, payments, trade logs, until she saw it. Meeting with Holden. Land near the creek. Promised safe passage if the deal goes through. Apache land. Must keep Eleanor out of this. Her breath caught. The truth was there. Thomas had sold land that wasn't his to sell, and Holden had been part of it. Before she could think further, a shadow flickered outside the window. She froze, candlelight trembling in her hand. Then, a soft knock at the back door. She turned, every muscle tight. "Who's there?" A low voice answered from the dark. "It is me." She opened the door slowly. The Apache warrior stood there, half in shadow, his body streaked with dust and rain. His long hair hung loose, and his pendant gleamed faintly in the moonlight. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "They will come at dawn," he said quietly. "Your sheriff lies. He fears what you will find." Eleanor swallowed hard. "You knew about Thomas?" He nodded once. "He took what was sacred. The land, the water, the stones. Your people built their homes upon our graves." Her hand shook, gripping the doorframe. "Then why save me?" "Because," he said, his dark eyes steady on hers, "you did not build the fire. You only stand in its smoke." The words struck her like thunder. Before she could reply, he stepped back into the night. "Wait, what's your name?" She called. He paused. "Nakai." And then he was gone again, into the trees, into the dark, leaving Eleanor alone with the truth and the storm that was coming with the dawn. The first scream of the night came with the smell of smoke. Eleanor woke to the sound of horses and shouting, her heart pounding as an orange glow flickered through her window. She stumbled out of bed, threw on her shawl, and rushed to the door. The old watermill, her last piece of Thomas's world, was burning. Flames clawed up its wooden frame, sparks raining into the wind as if the storm itself had returned to destroy what it had once spared. Men from town shouted orders, forming a bucket line from the creek, but the fire was too wild. The mill was collapsing into itself. Eleanor ran forward, only for Sheriff Holden to grab her arm. "Stay back. Let me go," she cried. "That's my home." "Not anymore," he said, almost smiling through the smoke. "Seems like the land's made its decision." Her blood turned cold. "You did this." Holden's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Mrs. Gray. You start throwing words like that, and folks might think you've lost your mind." Before she could answer, part of the mill's roof gave way with a roar. The night filled with sparks and heat. Eleanor could only watch as everything she owned, her husband's tools, his books, the journals she'd just read, turned to ash. But through the chaos, she noticed something. Hoof prints leading away from the mill. Fresh ones. Deep in the mud, leading toward the woods. When Holden turned to shout orders, she broke free and ran. She followed the tracks through the dark, clutching her shawl tight, the fire's glow fading behind her. The forest swallowed her whole, cool, damp, silent but for the rustle of leaves and the rush of her own heartbeat. Then she saw him. Nakai. He was kneeling beside a fallen log, one hand pressed to his side, blood darkening the earth beneath him. His hair hung wild, his chest streaked with mud and crimson. His tomahawk lay beside him, half buried in the dirt. Eleanor gasped and rushed forward. "You're hurt." He looked up, eyes sharp but calm. "They came," he said weakly. "Your sheriff. His men. They burn what they cannot own." She knelt beside him. "You saved me, and now they hunt you?" He didn't answer, only winced as she tore a strip from her shawl and pressed it against the wound. The blood seeped through quickly, but he didn't move away. "You shouldn't have come here," he murmured. "If they find you with me—" "Let them," she said fiercely. "I've already lost everything tonight." For a long moment, neither spoke. The night pulsed around them, frogs croaking in the creek, The distant crackle of dying flames, the whisper of wind through pine. Eleanor felt her hands trembling as she tied the bandage tight. What Holden said about Thomas? She began. Is it true? Did he sell your land? Nakai's jaw tightened. Your husband made a deal with men who promised him gold. They took our river, our fields, the stones where our children were buried. He did not know what he destroyed, but he did it all the same. She felt tears sting her eyes. Then my home was built on stolen graves. He looked at her, and his gaze softened. The land remembers. But it can forgive, too, if those who walk it do right. She met his eyes, the flicker of firelight glinting in them. Then I'll make it right. Before he could speak, the crunch of footsteps broke the silence. Voices. Lantern light through the trees. Holden's men were searching. Eleanor grabbed Nakai's hand. Come with me. He hesitated, then nodded once. Together they slipped deeper into the woods, following the creek until the forest grew thick and dark. She led him to an old root cellar hidden under her late husband's hunting shack, a place no one in town remembered existed. Inside, the air was cold and damp. She helped him lie down, covering him with a blanket. I'll bring water and food at dawn, she whispered. He caught her wrist before she could rise. Eleanor, he said, her name soft but heavy. When the sun rises, your people will come for war. Holden has already sent word. He will tell them the Apache burned your mill. Her breath caught. Then I'll tell the truth. Nakai shook his head. They will not listen to a woman who stands with my kind. They will call you mad. Or worse. She stared at him, defiant. Then let them. I'm done being silent. His hand lingered for a moment longer, then released her. You have courage, but courage is fire. Be careful it does not burn what you love. When she left the cellar, the eastern sky was pale with dawn. Smoke from the ruins drifted across the horizon. She turned back once and saw Nakai's shadow through the cellar's narrow crack, still. Watchful, like the spirit of the land itself, and as the first sunlight touched the wet earth, she swore she would bring justice to both the dead and the living, no matter what it cost. The sun bled red over the ridge, spilling its last light across the dry land like a wound refusing to close. Eleanor stood at the edge of the Apache camp, her dress dusted with sand, her heart caught between awe and unease. All around her, the tribe moved like a living rhythm, soft drumming. Children's laughter, the smell of roasted maize and smoke curling into the sky. It was beautiful, but she could feel the weight beneath it, grief, suspicion, and the tension that came from generations of bloodshed between their people and hers. Across the fire, Talon, the Apache warrior who had saved her, watched her with unreadable eyes. The flicker of the flames painted his face in gold and shadow. His long black hair gleamed like wet obsidian, his muscular frame bare except for the intricate jewelry that adorned his neck and arms, turquoise. Bone and silver pieces that caught the firelight like embers. He approached slowly, his steps deliberate. The tribe fell quieter. You do not belong here, he said in his deep, calm voice. The town will come for you, and they will bring death for us all. Eleanor met his gaze, her fingers tightening around the shawl one of the women had given her. Then let me leave, she said. I never asked for this. A muscle twitched in his jaw. You think you can walk back alone? The sheriff already sent men to track you. They'll shoot you before you reach the road. She turned toward the horizon, where the fading sun lit the desert in shades of copper and blood. Then what am I supposed to do, Talon? Stay here and watch your people die because of me? He took another step closer until she could smell the smoke and earth on his skin. Maybe fate put you here for a reason. Her throat tightened. Fate? She whispered, almost laughing. Fate doesn't care about people like us. Talon looked past her, toward the mountains. The white men came once before, promising peace. My father believed them. They gave us blankets soaked in sickness and took our horses. I learned what fate means." Eleanor's breath hitched. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to bridge a wound carved by centuries. But as the wind shifted and carried the scent of rain again, something stirred in her chest, something she couldn't name. A sudden cry broke through the silence. One of the lookouts ran into camp, breathless. "Riders!" he shouted in Apache. "They're coming from the east." Talon's head snapped toward the sound. The tribe moved swiftly, like a well-trained army. Men grabbed rifles and bows. Women gathered children and supplies. Eleanor's pulse pounded as she stared toward the ridge. How many? Talon demanded. 10. Maybe 12, the scout replied. They wear badges. The sheriff. Eleanor's stomach dropped. "It's me they want," she said. "Let me go to them. Maybe I can stop this." Talon's eyes burned. "They won't listen. They see you as something to claim, not to save." Before she could respond, a shot cracked through the air. The sound echoed across the canyon like thunder. A bullet tore into one of the campfires, scattering embers. The Apache warriors returned fire, and chaos erupted. Horses screamed, children cried, and smoke began to rise. Eleanor ducked behind a boulder as bullets whistled through the air. Talon grabbed his rifle and crouched beside her. "Stay down," he barked. "I can help?" "No." He caught her arm, pulling her closer as another bullet slammed into the rock beside them. "If anything happens to you, this blood will never end." She looked up at him, eyes wide, heart racing. "Then why did you save me?" Talon paused, chest heaving, face inches from hers. "Because I couldn't watch another innocent die," he said. "Not again." For a moment, the world stilled, the gunfire fading behind the pounding of her heartbeat. She saw something raw in his eyes, something that went beyond duty or pride. Then he rose, rifle in hand, and disappeared into the smoke. Eleanor shouted after him, but the wind swallowed her voice. As the night deepened and the fires spread, she realized something terrible. This battle wasn't just about her anymore. It was about two worlds colliding, and the only man who could stop the blood from running deeper had just gone to face it alone. And for the first time, Eleanor feared not for her own life, but for his. Smoke rolled through the canyon like a living thing, thick and angry, blotting out the stars. Eleanor's throat burned as she stumbled through the haze, clutching the hem of her torn dress, eyes stinging from the fire that devoured the edges of the Apache camp. The sounds of gunfire echoed from every direction, shouts in English, war cries in Apache, the shrill cries of terrified horses. "Talon!" She screamed into the chaos. Her voice cracked, swallowed by the storm of violence. Somewhere beyond the flames, she heard his rifle thunder. Then another shot, closer this time. She ducked behind a fallen wagon as bullets tore through its side. The world smelled of smoke, blood, and fear. When she dared to peek around, she saw him. Talon stood on a ridge above the camp, a dark silhouette against the burning sky. Bare-chested, muscles gleaming with sweat and ash, his long black hair whipped in the wind. The turquoise and bone beads on his chest reflected the firelight like sparks. He moved with the deadly grace of a mountain cat, reloading, firing, advancing. Every motion spoke of pain and purpose. He was fighting not for victory, but for survival. A gunshot rang out. Talon staggered. "No!" Eleanor's cry tore from her as she ran toward him, ignoring the bullets whistling through the air. Her feet pounded over the dirt, her lungs screaming for air. She reached him just as he fell to one knee, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his fingers, dark and shining. "Don't touch me," he rasped, pushing her back. "They'll see you." "I don't care," she shouted. You'll die if you stay here. A rider appeared behind them, a lawman with a rifle aimed straight at Talon's back. Without thinking, Eleanor grabbed the pistol from Talon's belt and fired. The man toppled from his horse, the echo of the shot splitting the night. Talon looked at her, surprise flickering through the pain. You've taken sides now. She knelt beside him, hands trembling. Maybe I should have done that the day you saved me. He tried to stand, but his strength was fading. The tribe was falling back toward the hills. The sheriff's men were pressing forward. Eleanor threw his arm around her shoulders and dragged him toward a cluster of rocks by the stream. Each step felt endless. He was heavy, his breath ragged, his skin hot with fever already setting in. Leave me, he muttered. You'll slow yourself down. Not a chance, she whispered fiercely. You saved me from them once. It's my turn now. They reached the stream, half hidden by reeds. Eleanor pulled him down beside her and tore a strip from her skirt to press against his wound. The water shimmered faintly under the burning sky, washing blood from her fingers. Talon's eyes found hers, weak but alive. When the sun rises, they'll come again. You must go. I won't. Eleanor. His voice broke slightly. I've seen too many fall because they thought they could change what the world already decided. Go back to your people. She shook her head, tears streaking her face. My people? She spat. The ones who tried to kidnap me? The ones who shoot at you because of the color of your skin? I don't have people anymore, Talon. I have you. For the first time since she'd met him, his hard expression softened. He reached out, fingers brushing her cheek. You're too kind for this world. Then we'll make a new one, she said. A sound interrupted them, the sheriff's whistle cutting through the smoke. Horses approached again. Eleanor froze. She could see their lanterns in the dark, moving closer like hunting lights. Talon forced himself upright. I'll draw them away. No, she begged, gripping his arm. You can't even stand, he pressed a hand to her lips. You want this to end? Then let me fight for it. Before she could stop him, he rose, staggering toward the ridge. His body was broken, but his spirit burned brighter than the flames around him. He raised his rifle and fired again, drawing the riders toward him. Shouting in Apache, a cry that echoed through the valley. Fierce and defiant, Eleanor watched, sobbing. As the shadows closed around him, when the gunfire stopped, silence fell heavy over the land. The fire still smoldered, painting the horizon in ash and red. Eleanor crawled to where he had stood moments ago, but he was gone. Only his turquoise necklace lay in the dirt, glinting faintly in the moonlight. She clutched it to her chest as tears fell freely. Whispering into the dark, You said the world decided? But I'll decide what comes next. And as dawn crept over the desert, Eleanor knew she wasn't done fighting for him. Not yet. Dawn broke over the desert like a trembling breath after a night of screams. The fire had died, leaving only blackened ashes and the faint hiss of cooling embers. The air smelled of smoke and sorrow. Eleanor stood barefoot in the mud beside the stream, her torn dress clinging to her body, her hands streaked with soot. The turquoise necklace talons hung from her neck, heavy as the silence around her. The sheriff's men were gone, the battle over, the Apache camp scattered into the hills. But Talon was nowhere. She had searched through the ruins all night, turning over burned blankets, calling his name until her voice broke, but there was no answer. Only the wind and the ravens. When the first light touched the canyon walls, Eleanor sank to her knees. For a moment, she let the grief take her. All the fear, the anger, the guilt, everything poured from her in shaking sobs. The man who had saved her life, who had stood between her and every danger since, was gone. But then, she heard it, a faint sound like the rustle of stones sliding. She lifted her head, heart hammering. The sound came again from beyond the ridge near the stream. She rose, wiping her tears, and ran toward it. When she reached the rise, she froze. There, half hidden among the rocks, lay Talon. His muscular body, bruised and bloodied, was barely breathing. His long black hair was matted with dirt and ash, and the morning sun caught the edge of his tribal jewelry, faintly glimmering beneath his collarbone. Eleanor dropped to her knees beside him. "Talon," she whispered, her voice trembling, "please, look at me." His eyelids fluttered, and a weak smile ghosted across his lips. "You? Still here? Of course I am." She pressed her hand against his cheek. "I told you, I'm not leaving you." He coughed, wincing, blood staining his teeth. "The others?" "Gone to the mountains. Safe now, and what about you?" she demanded, her tears returning. "You think you get to save everyone but yourself?" He tried to laugh, but it came out as a soft rasp. "You sound like my mother." She smiled through her tears. Then she must have been a wise woman. For a while they sat in silence as the desert began to wake. The birds returned, cautious but curious, their calls echoing across the canyon. The smoke drifted east, leaving behind the scent of wet ash and morning dew. "Talon," she said softly, "I can help you get to the hills. There's a healer with the tribe, right? We can—" He reached out and stopped her hand. His fingers were warm despite the chill. "No," he murmured. "My place is here." She shook her head violently. "No, don't you dare say that." He looked at her, then really looked. "When I found you in the rain," he said slowly, "I thought the spirits were playing tricks. A white woman standing in the storm, unafraid. You looked at me like I was a man, not a monster." "You're not a monster," she said fiercely. His hand brushed the turquoise around her neck. "Then promise me this. If they come for you again, you run to the mountains. Tell them I fought to keep this land free." Her tears fell onto his chest. "Don't talk like it's over." He smiled faintly. "It's not over. It just changes shape." A shadow fell across them. Eleanor turned, and froze out at the ridge stood dozens of Apache riders, their faces solemn. Men, women, elders all had come back. Their horses stood silent, breath misting in the dawn air. The tribe had returned. An elder dismounted and approached, kneeling beside Talon. He placed a hand over the warrior's heart and looked at Eleanor. "You stayed," he said in English, his voice rough with age. She nodded through her tears. "He saved me. I couldn't leave him." The elder's gaze softened. "Then you are one of us now." He motioned to the others. 4 warriors lifted Talon carefully onto a woven blanket, their movements reverent. Eleanor followed as they carried him up the hill toward the rising sun. When they reached the ridge, Talon opened his eyes one last time. His hand found hers, weak but certain. "You belong wherever your heart is," he whispered. And then, with the sun washing his face in gold, his breath slipped away. Eleanor didn't cry out. She simply pressed her forehead to his and closed her eyes. The wind lifted, carrying the scent of sage and rain like the day they met. Later, when the tribe built a cairn of stones overlooking the Red Canyon, they placed Talon's turquoise necklace around Eleanor's neck again, blessing her in their tongue. As she stood before his grave, the town below still smoldering, she made a silent vow. She would carry his story not as a tragedy, but as proof that compassion could bloom even in a land made of dust and blood. The desert wind rose behind her, whispering through the sagebrush, and for a heartbeat, she could almost hear his voice again, steady, warm, and alive in every echo of the land he died to protect. And when she walked away, the sun broke through the clouds, setting the world aflame with light.